Hello, and thank you for joining us for this edition of the One Young World Speaker Series. My name is Brighton Kaoma. I'm a very proud One Young World ambassador, having attended the One Young World Summit in The Hague in 2018. I'm currently in my room at Columbia University in New York. I'm the executive director of the Agents of Change Foundation. I'm very thrilled today to be speaking with Michael Møller, a civil servant who has spent over 40 years of his career in international diplomacy. I served as the 12th Director General of the United Nations, Office at Geneva, and he also spoke at the latest One Young World Summit in London. In the wake of the coronavirus, we're here to discuss what government responses to the pandemic tell us about international collaboration. So thank you again, Michael, for joining me. I'm so thrilled. And before we begin, do you want to tell me where you are? Are you with your family? And how are you coping with this situation?
Well, I'm in quarantine in Geneva in my house. I've been locked up here more or less for the last year, a week and a half. The pandemic we are in the middle of is beginning to hit Geneva and Switzerland rather hard. We have over 1,000 cases in Geneva alone right now. So we're being careful. I work from home. My wife works from home. The son studies from home and has schooling over the internet. And, I imagine that you're under the same circumstances. I see from the news that New York is being hit pretty hard by this virus as well right now. So yeah, we're in the same boat, so to speak, but with an ocean in between us.
I totally understand. I believe these are very uncharted waters for the last couple of weeks when the university president, announced that classes were going virtual, e-learning was becoming the order of the day. I mean, it really hit me hard. But nonetheless, taking more precautions must be the case for students around the world and anybody else to protect ourselves and be able to contain this pandemic. So Michael, for those who may not fully understand, can you please tell us why supranational organizations play critical roles during a pandemic like this?
Well, I mean, the primary international organization that plays a central role is the WHO, the World Health Organization, which is part of its job is to, first of all, fight pandemics and be preventive and try to avoid them. But when they do come online, as this one is doing, to act as to the extent that it can, as a central repository of knowledge, expertise, and action to coordinate the way that the world addresses this issue. This is an issue that is not going to be solved unless we all work together. And the WHO must be, if it can, to the extent that it can, be at the heart of this fight against it. It's having a bit of a hard time right now because a lot of countries think they can fix it themselves. The level of international cooperation that is needed is not present yet, unfortunately. A number of countries are not doing enough and fast enough to prepare themselves for what is coming. So WHO is having a hard time out of it. It's doing a splendid job within the parameters that are the realities today. It needs more financing. It needs more political support. It needs more practical support. But having said that, Dr. Tedros, who heads it, is doing a really good job.
And do you feel international bodies like the United Nations are strong enough to withstand the pressure they are facing in this time?
Well, the organization is a little bit in the same boat as I just described WHO, which is part of the UN family, where we are in this strange historical moment where countries, and some countries at least, have decided that it's more interesting for them to go it alone, to forget about international organizations, in some cases to forget about the rules that we have fought so hard collectively over the past several decades to build up and to base our management of our planet's affairs on. So the UN is, at a time when it's needed the most, as certainly it is now, is also having a hard time with the lack of financial support and lack of political support. But, we've been there before. These are the cycles of history. As in the past, reality always imposes itself sooner rather than later on every situation. And I'm confident that this will happen as well in this case. So the UN is there. It has been through these kinds of catastrophes before, also health pandemics before. And not so long ago, we had SARS, we had Ebola, we had different kinds of these. And there are many pandemics that we never hear of that the WHO actually has managed to suppress before they kind of blossom into a catastrophic event. So the UN as a whole, the UN family as a whole, is still doing a phenomenal job on the ground. At the political level, our member states are not allowing it to do as much as it should. And that is just a reality that we have to live within right now. Hopefully that will change. It is my hope that that this pandemic is going to be such a shock to the system that we will collectively really think again and come up with a better multilateral system and a better collaborative system where we all work together much better in the future.
Michael, you've spent so many years in international diplomacy. You've been the Director General before of the United Nations. In moments like this, what do you think is the right response for nations? And are we having any best practice examples that you would cite?
Yes, well, remember 2008 when we had a massive financial crisis and where the world got together, and particularly the big countries who have a lot of money got together and put together some rules on how to deal with that financial crisis. And we were quite successful in heading off an even greater catastrophe. But it only happened because of that collaboration, because everybody got together around the table and decided on how to proceed in a collaborative way. The same thing has to happen here. It is not happening yet. And it worries me a lot because unless we do get everybody around the table and we do get an agreement on how to move forward and how to move forward together, we're going to be in trouble. A virus doesn't know about borders. It certainly doesn't know about political decisions in one country and political decisions in others. It just infects all of us. It's an equal opportunity infector. We need to deal with it in that way. We need to work together. We need to pool our resources. We need to, from the north, the rich countries who have strong health systems, to help those in the south that don't, before it's too late, to help them with put in place public health systems that can withstand the worst of this crisis, to help them with doctors, to help them with public health officials, to help with expertise, to help them with money. And this is across the board. You're seeing collaboration now, for example, where Cuba and Russia are sending medics and sending supplies, and China as well, to Italy, which is facing a massive problem right now. And until that is curbed, then they're going to be helping out. We need to address and apply the same kind of solidarity to all of our brothers and sisters across the world that need it, and quite a few do. The African continent has been spared up to a point right now, but it's coming. We are seeing more and more countries having one or two cases here and there, and then it grows. And the same curve that we have seen in other countries will probably hit the African continent as well. And before it's too late, we need to help them. A lot of the same in Latin America, the same in certain countries in Asia and Central Asia. Afghanistan, for example, right now is at big risk of a massive outbreak. So, it's solidarity, 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 if I may say so. We really have to sit down and work together.
And in line with that thought, how can international organizations rebuild trust with people who feel these bodies do not work for them?
Yeah, well, it's a very good point you're making, Brighton. If there's one single word that is at the basis of many of the problems that we have today, it's the word trust. We live in a massive trust deficit on all levels of governance, whether it's international, regional, or national, or even communal. And we need to get that trust back in our citizens. The only way that they are going to get the trust in international organizations is and in government, by the way, and in any organization, whether it's police or it's a medical service in your country or whatever it is by proving that you're effective, at showing that you have an impact on the ground through your projects and your programs. It's no good just to use words. You have to have action. And you have to have action where it counts, and that is in the communities on the ground in all of the countries where you need it. And in this case, it doesn't matter whether it's south or north, east or west. We all are in need of help, and we all are in need of helping.
Mm. Yeah, and Michael, I'm very curious. I mean, we've spoken about certain inconsistencies in individual government reactions to this global crisis. What do these individual government reactions tell us about formulating global responses to some crises like this one?
Well, you see, this question is, and its answer is situated in a broader context. It's not just about the coronavirus pandemic. This is an evolution we're in, but we're kind of in between two chairs. The old system is still there, asymmetric. Some countries have gotten the message, others have not. And the new system, which is not yet structured or legitimized. And, you know, whenever you are in these kinds of situations of transition, nonsense happens. And this is very much what's happening right now. And in that context, a lot of countries, as I said earlier, have decided that they can deal with whatever problems we have, including some of the massive existential problems that we need to deal with on an urgent basis, like climate, first and foremost, but others as well. Health is one. Migration is another one. Corruption is another one. There are plenty of them. Education, etc. As long as they persist in thinking that they can deal with these problems, however big they are, these countries, or however big the organizations are, we're going to have a world that is fragmented, one that is not effective, one in which resources are squandered and not used properly. You know, we have proven time and time again that when we work together, when we pool our resources, our knowledge, our expertise, our human capital, then the impact of our action is so much bigger, so much more efficient, and helps so many more people that are in need of help. We have 4 years ago, the world kind of almost counterintuitively agreed to the Sustainable Development Goals, which have become our roadmap for most of us, most of the world, because it makes sense, and both generationally and geographically, and whatever kind of groupings you care to see, everybody understands that this is a way that we need to move forward. And it gives us the solutions for how to do it in an integrated, not just integrated between us actors, but integrated also in terms of the substance. Because if we're going to talk about poverty, we have to talk about kids, we have to talk about education, about health, about gender, about all of the issues that are in those 17 goals. We just need to make sure that we translate that insight, not just at the civil society level and at the business level, but also at the level of countries and governments, where that hasn't kind of sunk in again and they haven't gotten the message. Some governments are doing it. Certainly a lot of mayors in big cities around the world and in smaller cities have gotten it and are doing it and are working and doing really fantastic things. But the national level is lagging a little bit behind, and the national political level is lagging very much behind in some areas. So we have a historical moment that is difficult. My personal belief is that it is a transitional problem, that we will move into something much more logical, simply because if we don't, we're going to be in a serious situation that will have an effect on our very ability to survive as a race.
The moment the cases of the virus started getting recorded globally, being an international student in the United States, I thought about my parents in the rural parts of Zambia and the challenges that they may encounter if all hell broke loose. But also this brings me to something I would want to seek your clarity on. What do you think the impact of these border closures will have on the notion of globalization? You slightly touched base on that in your previous.
Well, but it's a pendant. It's a parallel pendant to what we're talking about. This business of closing doors and closing and pulling up the drawbridges and not allowing people in, and thinking that this is a way to solve this problem or any other problem for that matter. We saw it with the migration problem that we've had for a couple of years now. We're seeing it now with the pandemic. It may very well be that for health reasons and for health management reasons, we should close borders. But that has to happen in a collaborative way, managed and directed by the WHO, who have the overall mandate and the overall view and the overall knowledge of these things. I think that now as I said before, the virus is not gonna just stop because we close the border. It'll find a way to cross that border, whether we like it or not. And what we need to do is to make sure that we help each other in managing those flows and make sure that, as I said, it may very well be that for certain times, at certain moments and a certain period of time, that we do need to close borders for a while, or at least close the flow of travelers, public transport, trains, planes, simply because this has been a vector of spreading the virus. But closing borders for the sake of closing borders is not going to help anybody. And I hope that as soon as we get a grip on this virus, and we have gotten the numbers way down, if not eradicated altogether, that those borders are going to open again.
And do you think the panic and uncertainty this pandemic has caused could lead to a rising tide of nationalism and extremism?
We haven't spoken about the related problem that is already in the making and coming, which is the economic crisis that we're going to be. If this lasts for much longer, we are going to have a fairly serious economic crisis, global economic crisis. And again, here, if that is not managed from now, and how we're going to deal with the economy, and how we're going to deal with the financial crisis and the financial crunch, then it's going to get a lot worse than if we sit down and really take decisions on a collective management of it. So yes, in some cases it will have that effect, but that's already there. And in those cases where we have it already, it's just going to strengthen it unless, the democratic processes in those countries and the population of those countries wake up to the fact that this is not the way to move, and they elect somebody else who can do it differently. And let's just hope that that is the case. If indeed the pandemic will allow us to have elections across the world, because that is also a problem, unless we use technology to do it electronically and in other ways, and that is perfectly feasible. So the answer to your question is yes and no. I think that in some isolated cases this will happen because, frankly, it is still isolated. We are still looking at a small number of countries that are laboring under this kind of closing up syndrome, and I hope that we will be smart enough to understand that this is not the path that we have to take.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, Michael, this has been really incredible. We're just out of time, but if you could leave the One Young World community with a final piece of mind, what would it be?
It will be very simple. Every single one of you has a responsibility. If there's one thing that I'm really hoping is that we turn this catastrophe into an opportunity to come up with a renewed, rethought, reinvented multilateralism that is much more networked, that is much more collaborative, that is much more integrated, that really leverages the knowledge, the expertise of each one of us. I have been extremely happy to see the kind of activism that we have seen the past couple of years. If you take the example of climate and how generations completely changed the dialogue and the conversation on climate and have changed policies in a number of countries, including some very big ones. The means today to communicate and to let our voices heard, even if we're not there physically, to an extent that nobody has had before in the life of our race, if you want. Certainly I didn't when I was a kid, and our parents didn't. But the generation of today has the ability to let its voice heard in ways that are getting strengthened every day. Technology is changing every day and is becoming more powerful and more omnipresent. Use it. Use your voice. But link up with others in neighboring countries and other parts of the world. We all have to become internationalists. We all have to be the champions of multilateralism and of a different kind of way of working, of sort of reaching out to each other and sit down and work together for a much better world than what we have now. We are on the brink of some really serious problems. I mentioned climate earlier. If you don't, in fact, I would like to just stress that as well. If we don't link the climate problem that we have created and that we're leaving to you to deal with in the next decades, it doesn't really matter what else we're doing, because a lot of us won't be around to deal with it. because of the effects of climate change on the way on our lives. It's absolutely important that within the next very short period of time, the next 10 years or so, that we ramp up our efforts to lick this problem. I'm convinced that we can. We have the knowledge, we have the expertise, we have the human capital, we have the money. We just have to have a little bit more will. And we used to say that we needed more political will, but I don't say that anymore, because as I see things evolving, it's less and less relevant. Our leaders, in many cases, have let us down, and we need to really become the leaders of tomorrow. I will leave you with a saying by my old boss, Kofi Annan, who said, and I know that One Young World uses that that you're never too young to lead and you're never too old to learn. That encapsulates very much what I would leave with a message with you, where all of us have a really enormous responsibility to be part of the solution today. We cannot afford, any one of us on this planet, to sit on our hands and think that somebody else will do it for us. Does that
Michael,
work?
thank you so much. And please give a big thank you to Michael for his time and insight and wisdom. And make sure to like, comment, and share this session. Thank you for watching. And I just want to really appreciate all your incredible insights. Everything that you've spoken about really embodies what the One Young World stands for, and us as ambassadors around the world. Thousands of One Young World ambassadors are taking a more proactive step in ensuring that we contribute positively to turning back this tide and making sure that we live a much more sustainable society that is more regenerative, but at the same time also puts into perspective the next generation. Otherwise, I'm so grateful for your time, and I wish you nothing but the very best.
Thank you very much. Good luck to every single one of you. I look forward to interact with you again and work with you in the One Young World context. I think it's a tremendous and great organization that is really inspiring. I can tell you that when I spoke in London last time you met there, it was such an energy boost to be in that room with all of you. It was fantastic. Thanks to all of you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Michael. Have a good day. Bye for now. Thank you.